What was the Hasidic community in New York? What was their reaction to the film when it was released?
They didn't react to the Hasidic community. They don't watch secular movies, and so the reaction that we were more interested in was kind of like religious Jews, but not Hasidic Jews, because we knew Hasidic Jews wouldn't really know about this movie, and we were pleasantly surprised to see that the reaction by religious Jews, but not Hasidic Jews, was that they felt the movie respected their culture, and that they felt that was unique to movies, which often present Hasidic Jews for some kind of comedic end, and that was never our intention.
So obviously you needed to do a fair amount of research, I'm guessing, to sort of get into the community and to play your part convincingly. Again, I guess interestingly that if the audience that the film is or the community the film is about doesn't actually watch it,
right?
It's like a bit moot as to how accurate you are, I guess, to some extent. But so how did you? I'm assuming they wouldn't have been very cooperative or.
No, they actually were. It was a kind of well, it's a bit strange. There's a group of Hasidic Jews that proselytize and that are eager to meet secular Jews like me and to kind of bring them into the fold. And so I took advantage of their embrace, and so under the guise of a secular Jew, which I actually am, eager to learn about my roots, I asked to be involved in their lives. They took me into the schools in Crown Heights for several days. I did interviews with them that I recorded, and they were very open. When I spent a lot of time with one person, I would tell them this: I'm doing this for a role, so in the interest of full disclosure, and they were interested in that. And no, it was pretty. It was much more. The reception was far more warm than I expected it to be.
So, why do you think that Sam was so readily succumbed to the temptations that were offered to him? Why would such a sheltered young man have sort of gone so readily for that, do you think?
One of the interesting things about this Hasidic community is that they live so close to Manhattan, and yet their lives are so separate. And by Manhattan, I just mean everything that is modern and kind of attractive to somebody who lives in a very isolated world. And so for Sam, he feels like he wants to make more money. He feels like he doesn't want to be a rabbi. He doesn't want to work in the garment district like his father. He is rejected from his arranged marriage because he suspects that he doesn't have enough money for the family. And so he, is understandably allured by nice things, by his neighbor's Rolex watch and nice car, by the prospect of flying all around the world. And having an expense account and all this stuff that is attractive to a young man who is coming from an isolated world. I could certainly relate to this, and I am not even living in the Hasidic community, so it must be that much more for somebody like Sam.
Yeah, I thought at one point when I was watching the film that there was an interesting kind of meeting point between your Mark Zuckerberg and Sam Gold, and that they're both young men who kind of succumb to the temptations that these more worldly, slightly older young men offer them both. Sean Parker, obviously, in the case of Mark Zuckerberg, and Yosef in Sam's case.
Yeah.
Do you think that's maybe a fairly common trait that for young men who are, particularly young men maybe who are a bit isolated, as both of those characters are in their own way? Do you think there's maybe
that's exactly right.
tendencies for that?
Yeah, both characters, I think, display a great capability. So those older characters take advantage of that capability. In the case of Holy Rollers, he sees that my character is bright and can handle kind of the finances of the drug world, and that he's responsible. So he brings him in, and then of course my character is corrupted and tries to get out of it. In the case of The Social Network, Sean Parker sees that Mark has created this empire and has this great ability to see how other people want to connect with each other and create a tool for them to do that, and takes advantage of Mark in that way too. And in both cases, the characters that I play end up rejecting those slightly older and dangerous figures. Mark dismisses Sean from Facebook, and Sam in Holy Rollers leaves Yosef at the end of the movie.
One of the things I found interesting about Sam, and for which is consistent in its own way, it's a sort of ambivalent way, is that the character never entirely goes over to the dark side, if you will. There's kind of a very believable complexity about him, and I think that is more realistic to real life than many dramas. There's an arc, and you move from kind of point A to point whatever. But I saw Sam as more of this. He never entirely gives up his faith.
Yeah, that's right.
He never entirely goes over to the dark side. He never entirely gives up his faith. So how do you kind of arrive at that tone for the character, or whatever the right way to describe it?
Thanks for that great insight, because this is exactly what we wanted to do. We didn't want the character to kind of turn into this drug impresario, because it would be unbelievable. It's exactly how you described. He holds on to his faith, and he kind of remains ultimately a good person. So even though he's in this world where people are doing kind of dangerous and nefarious things, he holds on to what's good about him, and it's for that same reason that at the end of the movie kind of turns away from it.
To me, I guess probably his darkest point, though, the point at which he probably comes the closest to completely abandoning any sort of moral core that would be, inherent in him just as a person and from his faith, is when he was actively recruiting other Hasidic people to be involved in that. Would you agree that's probably his lowest point? Maybe that's the point at which he's hitting the bottom and then bouncing back.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's it's one thing for him to kind of hurt himself, but to bring other young men like him into this world that he now knows is not good is really unethical. And so yes, I would agree that is his lowest moment. And he's also he's preying on kids in the same way he was preyed on, and that's ultimately what destroys the operation. Is they have kids that start to talk. That's how the operation unfolds, and also they're kind of irresponsibly cutting in drugs that are able to be sniffed at. Right.
That took me a minute to figure that out. I thought when I watched that for a minute, I thought, did the dogs just figure out how to sniff out ecstasy? Then it was like, no, wait a minute. They talked about cutting it, and it wasn't pure MDMA anymore, and all that stuff.
Exactly.
Did you meet any of the people that this film is based upon, or have any contact with any of them?
No, a lot of them, as you can imagine, are in prison. But there's a character that my character is loosely based on, and he saw the movie. And I unfortunately was not in town, but he saw the movie, and he told the director that he came up and said, "I'm him," and he was in a state of great shock, having just witnessed what he said perfectly reflected what his life was like at that time. And I would have really liked to meet him beforehand, so I can learn about that prior to shooting the movie. But it was still nice to hear that he approved of it.
Yeah. So I guess it's really just there was very little about it in the production notes that I read, but I guess it really is it's a sending off point, really, that the fact that this kids were being used as mules, and then the story was kind of created out of that. Right. There's not.
Yeah, that's right. There's not a direct parallel from for each character to a real person.
That's that interesting point that obviously people talked about with Facebook. The early people who were not big supporters of the social network or fans or whatever were saying, it plays too fast and loose with the facts. But I guess that's kind of the danger, isn't it, when you have that line at the beginning of a film that says "inspired by a true story."
Right.
People tend, I think, just to see the thing that says "true story."
Yes. Yeah. Well, with the Social Network, I mean, everything that happens in the movie was vetted by a legal team, and that in the Social Network we took, or not me so much as the Aaron Sorkin and Ben Mesrick, who wrote the book that the movie is based on, and the Sony legal department. They took they made great efforts to make sure everything was accounted for. Whereas Holy Rollers, we used this amazing true story as a jumping off point, and told our own story.
My last question today, and the guys at the website asked me to ask you about this.
Okay.
The Saturday Night Live thing a few weeks ago. Was that when Mark Zuckerberg walked out?
Yeah.
Was that really the first time you'd met him, or were you ready for it?
We had met an hour before to discuss the situation, and no, obviously everything's planned.
Yeah.
But that was the first time I met him. In terms of that, that was the first night I met him. He was so gracious to do that. I mean, you know, I could only imagine what it must be like to have a movie made about things you did when you were in college, and you know, later in court. And I could imagine it must be so uncomfortable. So the fact that he agreed to come and do something so silly, make fun of the situation, was so gracious.
Maybe part of that was just, you know, he you know, the film has done so incredibly well, and deservedly, that he finally thought, can't beat him, join him.
I suspect that maybe, but also to quote Stephen Colbert, who said he said that you know, Mark Zuckerberg. Oh, he said the social network has done so well. It's made $96 million in domestically. $96 million. That's only $4 million less than Mark Zuckerberg gave to the Newark public school system. So you know, even though the movie's done well, Mark has done better.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. Yeah, nice to meet you.